What is up, ladies and gents? This is George Bean, and this video might have come as a surprise to some, but I had decided to do this review and felt the need to bring attention back to today's movie. And as you could guess by the title, today's film is the 2007 British action comedy film Hot Fuzz, which was directed and co-written by Edgar Wright and co-written by Simon Pegg, who also stars in the lead role as Super Cop Nicholas Angel, alongside Nick Frost as Danny Butterman. Hot Fuzz was also the second installment in Wright and Pegg's so-called Three Flavors Cornetto trilogy, which began with 2004's Shaun of the Dead, and ended with 2013's The World's End. The plot. The film follows London Metropolitan Police Constable Nicholas Angel, who, due to this near-perfect success putting other cops to shame, is transferred up to the small village of Sanford. As he settles in, he becomes suspicious that a series of accidents plaguing the village are actually murders, all being committed by a major sinister conspiracy within the village, as part of their efforts for the greater good. The greater good. The film was designed by Edgar Wright and Simon Pegg to be a quote-unquote British cop film molded as a US action film, similar to the likes of Lethal Weapon and Bad Boys. Of course, it is a British parody of our action films, but it does so in a sort of deadpan, humorous light type of approach, sort of like how it was similarly done in Spaceballs, Airplane, and even Shaun of the Dead. Upon its release on February 14th of 2007 in the United Kingdom and April the 20th in the United States, the film had grossed $80 million in its worldwide box office against its $12 million budget. Within 9 weeks of its release, the film earned nearly twice of what Shaun of the Dead had made in the US, and more than 3 times its gross in other countries. And for its critical receptions, Hot Fuzz was a critical darling, with many praising it for its parodying the buddy cop action genre, the acting performances by Pegg, Frost, and Timothy Dalton, as well as its comedy and action elements. As it should be noted again, Hot Fuzz is part of the Three Flavors Cornetto trilogy by Edgar Wright and Simon Pegg, which includes Shaun of the Dead and The World's End. The name Cornetto being in reference to the Cornetto ice cream, which was featured in Shaun of the Dead as a hangover cure for Nick Frost's character. At the after-party for that film, the cast and crew received free Cornetto ice creams, so Wright and Pegg had decided to include another reference to Cornetto in Hot Fuzz, in what would be an ultimately failed attempt to get more free ice cream. Much like the ice cream, each film has a color palette pertaining to the film. For Shaun of the Dead, it's red in reference to zombies and blood. In Hot Fuzz, it's blue to reference to the police. And for The World's End, it's green in reference to aliens. And one other intriguing fact for huge Edgar Wright fans is that Edgar has started off making a 40-minute short film in 1993 entitled Dead Right when he was 18. The short film was his first attempt at making a British cop film molded as a US action film, and was about a hotshot, Dirty Harry wannabe cop who investigates a series of murders being committed by a serial killer. No, seriously, a serial killer. You can find the short film on the Blu-ray edition of Hot Fuzz as a special feature, and just by watching the short, you can clearly see elements in that Edgar would later use in Hot Fuzz. And when watching it, it feels much more self-referential and meta than Hot Fuzz. It almost kept reminding me of Airplane and Spaceballs, mainly in that Zucker Brothers style humor in the way it references the characters having to quote-unquote read the script. And in what I consider to be the short film's funniest joke is when Edgar Wright himself makes a cameo as the director whom the villain holds as a hostage for a moment. And he even says it's only one line in the film. "Don't shoot me. Who's gonna direct?" And also to add even more fun to the Dead Right short, it also even includes 2 audio commentaries, one from Edgar Wright himself, and the other from Simon Pegg and Nick Frost, both whom sound bored and maybe even somewhat drunk throughout their track. I recommend checking out the Dead Right short on the Blu-ray of Hot Fuzz. It's worth the watch. But with that said, Dead Right was part of Wright's ambition to make what was basically meant to be Britain's own version of our dumb action movies from America. Mostly those from the 1980s and 90s. And so after Shaun of the Dead became a big success, Wright and Pegg went on to make their next film, which they decided would be an action parody using Wright's own Dead Right as the sort of starting off platform for their script. And when writing the script, they had looked to hundreds of action films for inspiration, including the Lethal Weapon movies, the Bad Boys movies, Point Break, and many others. Even the title, Hot Fuzz, was meant to be referential to the fact that a majority of action films tend to have 2-word titles, such as Die Hard, Lethal Weapon, Executive Decision, etc. Now, as for me, I'm gonna be brutally honest here, but I had just gotten around to watching this film just a while ago. At least like a year, almost a year or 2 ago. And it took a long while to write the script for this review, just to make sure I have everything in place. I've heard of this film for a very long time since it first came out, but I had never gotten around to it. I guess I was not really into cop movies at that time when I was a teenager. I was into action movies when I was a teenager, but Hot Fuzz was one of those that never caught up to me. But it wasn't just until like almost a year ago when I was able to afford to buy a copy on Amazon and order for one. Popped it in the player and finally gotten to watch it. And wow! Now I wish I had gotten around to it much sooner. Cause Hot Fuzz was amazing. Incredible. I'd even go so far as to say that it may actually be one of the very best British comedies out there, and one of the very best action comedy films out there alongside Last Action Hero. Me and my pops had always seemed to agree that the British seem to do comedy better. I grew up watching Mr. Bean by Rowan Atkinson. Mr. Bean is one of my favorite sitcoms growing up as a kid. Amazing to see an actor be able to pull off comedy without even uttering a single line of dialogue. And then he has the same last name as mine, so I think that's cool. The one thing I especially love the most about this film is how it is an amalgam of a buddy cop action film, a horror movie, a murder mystery, and a conspiracy thriller, and it is most especially a parody comedy. Love how there is always something to pay attention to. Like, for example, almost everyone has a name that is either ominous or ends with the ER part. Simon Skinner, Tom Weaver, Reverend Shooter, yes, Reverend Shooter, Dr. Richard Hatcher, Annette Roper, John Weaver, Joyce Cooper, Martin Blower, Tim Messenger, Eve Draper, Peter Ian Staker, Leslie Tiller, etc. And there is an awful lot of foreshadowing in this film. The best example being the fascist hag joke, which is my favorite, and many others that I don't want to give away for those who haven't seen the movie yet. Sanford even has a neighborhood watch group of its own, as per usual called the Neighborhood Watch Alliance, or NWA for short. That is brilliant. I was stunned when I heard that. I commend Edgar Wright and Simon Pegg for such attention to detail like NWA. It's brilliant. It also even brings up how Sanford is being invaded by hoodies. Those bloody hoodies. Which I'm sure anybody living in Britain might already know was a term that had become associated with troublemaking teens with an antisocial behavior. A concept which was also explored most prominently in the 2010 British horror film Eden Lake, or of which I would like to call it as the British Deliverance. As for the cast, Simon Pegg, I really like Simon Pegg. He's one of my favorite comedians out there. And he was amazing as Sergeant Nicholas Angel in this. Love how he plays Angel as a very well-determined cop who knows right and wrong and wishes to do good for the community. The kind of super cop you see in movies like Dirty Harry or John McClane. But 100% perfect. But maybe even a bit too perfect, some might say. I'd even dare to say that Angel might even be the British equivalent to Jack Slater from Last Action Hero, only having the intelligence to solve a possible murder case. He's smart and vigilant enough to quickly suspect that the accidents might actually be murders. One could say that he might be a bit of an OCD man, as he keeps having to correct people with words such as police service instead of police force, or police officer instead of policeman, etc. The one thing that I will sin Angel for is the fact that he had never seen Die Hard. Very big mistake on his part. Everybody needs to see Die Hard at some point in their lives. One of my all-time favorite action movies out there, and an amazing Christmas movie. Yippee-ki-yay, motherfucker! But eventually he does make up for that in the second half, when he decides to take a few lessons from the action movies he had learned from Danny, and finally become a action super cop, action hero for the third act. I love when he deepens his voice. Is it me, or does he sound like Jason Statham when using his deep voice? He could perfectly impersonate Jason Statham if he does voiceover in a video game. I'm sure we wouldn't notice the difference. And we've also got Nick Frost as Constable Danny Butterman, a young Sanford cop and the son of the main inspector of the police, who loves buddy cop films like Point Break and Bad Boys 2. He begins to look up to Angel as a mentor type. I had read somewhere in the trivia that original drafts had initially featured Angel as having a romantic interest, but Wright and Pegg chose to remove the romance element and instead focus more on the friendship between Angel and Danny. I believe that was a wise choice on their part. It's unnecessary to give Angel a love interest, given how he is shown to be more like married to his job, and choosing to focus on Angel's friendship with Danny does give the film a bromance element. And in addition is Jim Broadbent as Inspector Frank Butterman, Danny's father, and the lead inspector of the Sanford Police. For those of us who grew up on Harry Potter, including me, myself, we will most likely know Broadbent as Professor Horace Slughorn from Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince. But I also come to remember him as the new Dean Charles Stanforth in Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. So I was already somewhat familiar of him before seeing this film. And we've got, surprisingly, the Timothy Dalton, who is fantastic as Simon Skinner. Dalton looks like he is really enjoying his role in this film, as a red herring who is making quips that would end up throwing suspicion on himself. You could not have made it any more obvious that he was the suspect. I'm a slasher of prices. Bash your head in. I mean, it's so obvious that they might as well have put a neon sign up over his head that reads "Bad Guy." In fact, I'm really surprised that they didn't actually do the neon sign thing. The way the film portrays Simon Skinner as the suspected killer is somewhat similar to the character of Billy Loomis in Scream. In that film, Billy is suddenly suspected of being the killer, but the movie also makes you doubt over whether or not that Billy might really be the killer, toying with your suspicions and doubts, until it finally reveals that he really was the killer all along. But then it also reveals that he had an accomplice as well. But I remember Dalton as James Bond in The Living Daylights and License to Kill, but especially as the villain in The Rocketeer, so it was nice to see him in a comedy like this. I do love seeing him lapping it up in this film, enjoying every second of it. And I cannot list them all, but I know that there are a ridiculous amount of well-known actors in this film who have, in some capacity, whether a special appearance or a cameo. First off, we got Edward Woodward as Tom Weaver, the civilian liaison of the NWA. For those who don't know, is that Edward Woodward is most known for starring in the 1973 British horror film The Wicker Man, that being the good classic, not the 2006 remake with Nicolas Cage, mind you. But given how The Wicker Man also featured a murderous cult, it's fitting that he'd also cameo in this film as well. Similar premise of a cop discovering a psychotic cult. And we do also have Billy Whitelaw, who plays the florist Joyce Cooper in this film. Some might recognize Whitelaw in Alfred Hitchcock's 1972 serial killer film Frenzy. Also, Hot Fuzz would turn out to be her final film role before her death in 2014, sadly. She is the one who shouts out "Fascist!" Before firing a German World War I era Uzi gun in the climax. We've also got Bill Nighy as the Metropolitan Chief Inspector. It's always cool to see Bill Nighy playing a role, especially one that doesn't require him to wear makeup or a motion capture suit. And I love his deadpan humor. He's brilliant at it. And there's Kate Blanchett, who plays Angel's ex-girlfriend, Janine. She only appears in one scene, though you probably wouldn't know that because she was wearing a medical mask on her. But it's the eyes that give it away. Only she could have such great eyes like that. And finally, we've got Peter Jackson in a quick blink and you'll miss shot as Father Christmas, who stabs Angel in the hand with a pocket knife. Yep, that's Peter Jackson there, dressed up as Santa. As for other things, I do also love that one scene where Angel and Danny are assigned to deal with a Welsh farmer named Arthur Webley over what initially seems to be a spot of butter over hedge clippings that don't belong to him, but they end up discovering that he is hiding a shit ton of weapons and firearms in his barn, even an old sea mine. I mean, wow, seriously, with the amount of weapons this guy has, he's got more than enough that he could have started his own goddamn militia. Now, in discussing the mystery plotline, you should probably know by now that I am a very huge fan of the whodunit mystery. I always has been, ever since I had first seen Scream as a small kid. And one of my all-time favorite books is Agatha Christie's 10 Little Indians. I hate to say that word. Or as it is now currently entitled, And Then There Were None. I might dare to even say that Agatha Christie might be one of my all-time favorite book authors or novelists out there, along, like that. So with that said, I really do love how it handles the mystery aspect in the film. Very surprising how a comedy could handle detective mystery without it feeling arbitrary or unnecessary. It provides hinty clues and even red herrings that does not fail in its execution of the twist reveal. I really love how it makes you suspect it to be one thing, but then it completely turns it upside down and reveals it to be something else. So in that description, this film's mystery reveal sort of reminds me of the likes of Psycho or Parasite, where it leads you to expect it to be one thing, but then it mutates into a different thing. I like that one scene near the beginning after Angel arrives in Sanford. He stops by the city fountain and spots a plaque engraved, which has a list of 12 names on it. And later on in the film, when it is revealed that there are 12 killers, it recalls back to the 12-name plague, thus tying it all together and revealing their linkage to each other. I love the scene when Angel accuses Skinner, where he suspects the murders to be part of a sort of Chinatown-style twist, suspecting that the murders are linked to each other over a recent property deal that could result in the building of a new bypass road, and eventually a new rival supermarket. And it seems to Angel that Skinner did not want a rival market to take away his loyal customers, and ultimately decided to dispose of the competition and stage their murders as accidents, in an effort to cover up his tracks and involvement in the deaths. It really is a pretty interesting theory from Angel. I commend such a theory. And again, the type of twist you'd expect in something like Chinatown, or even Who Framed Roger Rabbit. And I do have to say that I really do actually applaud Angel's theory. It's the perfect kind of motive Skinner could possibly have to want to commit the murders by himself. In a weird way, that theory alone could hold enough weight on its own to make the mystery work. But when it actually reveals the big twist by the third act, the real motive is revealed to actually be something that's much more childish and juvenile. As it turns out, it's not just Skinner alone, but the entire NWA group who are murdering people as part of their intent to make Sanford's rustic aesthetic image appear to be picture perfect. Enough for the village to win the annual Best Village of the Year award every year. And so as somebody like myself, who is a huge murder mystery fan, I will say, bravo there. That is an absolutely brilliant twist. Honestly, if you'd have asked me that if Agatha Christie Agatha Christie herself were still alive now and had gotten to see this movie, I am certain she probably would have not only praised the mystery elements in it, but probably also would have laughed with hilarity as well. I do love when a mystery initially makes you suspect it to be one killer, but then reveals it to actually be multiple killers. The thanks scream. But here in Hot Fuzz, it was uh, uh, it was it was like more widely popularized by Agatha Christie's Murder on the Orient Express, and much like in that book, Fuzz reveals there to be 12 killers, almost acting as the judge, jury, and executioner of Sanford. So this film gets another thumbs up for me for executing its mystery perfectly well by making us believe that it's one killer, only to reveal there to actually be multiple killers. But also, their choice of victims is hilarious too. That being the hoodies, crusty chugglers, gypsy scum, traveling kids, the travelers, thieving kids, and yes, even dog muck. Anybody who doesn't fit their village image and style and could pose a threat to their winning the Village of the Year award, it is a nice twist and a great one how Frank mentions that there hasn't been a recorded murder in Sanford in 20 years, but there has been, just in secret, and by their own hands, thereby making people disappear without suspicion. It's a shocking and yet hilarious surprise to reveal that the NWA has secretly been killing people for, if I could guess correctly, the past 20 years. And as for the main murders, Martin Blower because he was an atrocious actor, Eve Traber because she had an annoying laugh, George Merchant because he had a lousy house that didn't fit with Sanford's rustic aesthetic, Tim Messenger because he sucked at editorial spelling, and Leslie Hatcher, Leslie Tiller, because she was gonna move to Buford Abbey along with her flowering business. So Sanford figured that if they can't have her, then no one can. But I will say one thing. The one thing that does kind of leave me a bit goosebumpsy is how the amount of enormous power that Frank Butterman has over the town, the control, the influential power he has, it shows, like, he is the mastermind of this whole thing, and, I think that really shows just how much enormous power he has over the village of Sanford, and I think that makes him a really outstanding action movie villain in something like this. And Jim Broadbent really does an amazing job playing Frank Butterman in this with that type of thing. What I also love most about this film is its third act climax, when Angel and Danny both finally team up and become real action heroes in a huge gunfight battle between them and the villains in the town. After an hour and a half of build-up, the action climax becomes absolutely worth it, as it becomes more like the kind of action climax that we come to expect in such a movie, and it lives up to the action in every way. Absolutely worth it. Now, for other things about this film, is that this film also even has some elements of a western in it. A cowboy walks into a small town and does battle with evil doers there, led by a corrupt police sheriff. Especially when the third act starts, when Angel returns to Sanford ready for a gunfight. He is armed to the teeth. He has two shotguns mounted on his back, almost appearing like angel wings. And he even rides back into Sanford on a white horse. or a pale horse. And also, more importantly, because of the Western element, Frank Butterman mentions being a Wild West fanatic. And in one scene, he is featured dressed as an Old West sheriff, along with his son Danny dressed as a deputy. And in the final scene, it's mentioned that the Angel has become the new chief of the Sanford Police, thereby making him the new sheriff in town. So yeah, this movie pretty much has everything I never thought I'd actually wanted in a movie like this. A cop moving to a small town with a dark secret involving a murderous cult, similar to The Wicked Man and even Edge of Darkness, involving an Agatha Christie-style whodunit murder mystery, and it ends with the Kiro cop battling the cult in an awesome action-oriented climactic shootout. It is a buddy cop movie, an Agatha Christie whodunit mystery, a conspiracy thriller, and most even an action comedy, all rolled into one package. It's basically Lethal Weapon, Edge of Darkness, and Scream all amalgamated into one movie. And finally, one other thing, we have the music score that was composed by David Arnold, who is well known for scoring films like Independence Day, and the few James Bond 007 films, starting in 1997 with Tomorrow Never Dies, and ending in 2008 with Quantum of Solace. I love the one score that goes like "Boo-doo-doo-doo-da, boo-doo-doo-doo-da, boo-doo-doo-doo-da, I love that piece, I really do. It sounds so cool. It really seems like David Arnold had a blast when scoring this film. But overall, in the end, I would happily give Hot Fuzz a rating of 10 stars out of 10. Because I believe that it is a pitch-perfect British parody of the buddy cop action comedy genre, and also the murder mystery genre as well, and certainly one that does an amazing job at handling its jokes, and even living up to them as well. I absolutely praise the screenplay written by Simon Pegg and Edgar Wright. Everything they wrote in it is pitch-perfect. I don't really find even a single flaw within this film, and it is also one I can happily put on my list of favorite action films, alongside Die Hard and Lethal Weapon and even Last Action Hero. I would definitely recommend Hot Fuzz to you all. It is an action comedy parody that I'm sure you ladies and gents will definitely enjoy, especially if you are an action junkie like me. So thank you all for watching this. Hope you all have a lovely day, and wish you the best of high hopes for 2021. And one more thing. Swan! Bye-bye.